We are now going to add a snap. I'm going to do the snap at the very top of my neck, and I'm going to put the male or the ball side on the wrong side of the right side of the bodice. We're going to make it so that the snap is about 1/4 of an inch in from the fold and also 1/4 inch down from my neck, and that's where I'm going to sew it. You'll still want a doubled needle with thread, so knot your thread. And we are still going to put that on the wrong side of the bodice. So you can tell that the first stitch that I took did not go all the way to the right side of the fabric, but the second stitch that I take is, and I'm going to try to make it so very minuscule. All right, so I'm taking the thread all the way through to the right side of the fabric, and then you can tell that I'm going to put my needle so close next to where I've just taken that stitch and come back through and make it go through the snap hole, okay? That means that the only thing that's visible is this tiny little anchor stitch. We don't need to do more than one of them per hole. Now we can just go through this doubled layer. Then I'm going to travel through the folded layer, okay? We're not going to the outside at all, but you can see that I'm inside the double layer and I'm traveling to the next hole. I'm going to go through all my layers, get my anchor stitch out of the way, and I'm going to come back through right next to where I took that initial stitch. You want it to be incredibly tiny. There we go, just a little prick. If this were in a matching thread color, so in a cream or a white, it would be very discreet. Remember that the silver snaps have a tendency to cut your thread, so try to be gentle as you're sewing to prevent that from happening. Now to knot, I don't want the knot to come on the other side. I don't want it to rub against it. So I'm actually going to take a tiny stitch outside of my snap, just to the side, and then knot so that my knot will not end up on the metal. It will end up to the side right there. Again, like we did with our initial hand sewing sampler, I'm going to use my pencil and get some graphite onto the ball of my snap. Make sure that my center front is aligned and press. That will transfer exactly where the center of your female or socket snap needs to be to close. If you find that things are knotting a lot, try to use a shorter piece of thread. So I'm putting the socket right over where I've marked And now I can stitch through all layers. I don't have to worry about making this as pretty on the inside because it is the inside of the garment. So I'm able to go through all of the layers and do 5 or 6 stitches in each snap hole. You'll also see that I stabbed myself and I bled on my ugly bodice. This is times of COVID, so I want you to take this with a grain of salt. Spit will take out blood. I'm not going to do that right now because it's not a good practice in times of COVID because of the amount of germs and aerosols that we could be spreading. But just know that if you ever get blood on a garment, you can always spit on your finger and then rub it in the garment and it should remove. It has to be my blood and my saliva. All right, I am going to travel between the layers to get to my other hole. Sometimes you'll find that you get a knot because the threads are being fed at a different speed, and that creates a loop which then tangles and knots. So sometimes I pull out the thread so that it's at the same level and then try again. All right, so this is my last one. I'm going to go to the wrong side of the fabric and tie off, clip my thread next to my knot. Okay. So now we have our snap. It should be aligned at the neck and flat. We are good to go with our front closures.